Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Kristy Taylor, career and executive coach and founder of WORxK Solutions LLC. And I am here with another exciting episode of the WORxK Solutions Podcast. And today we are focusing on career development inside organizations and growing people without losing him. And our guest today is Mr. Earl Morrison. Earl is not new to the WORxK Solutions platform. He joined us last year during our Prescription for Success conference. We've also had an opportunity to collaborate on the volume 1 of the Prescription for Career Success book. And so I'm excited to have Earl back on the podcast today. So I'm going to kick it off with reading his bio, and then we're going to jump right into that conversation. So Earl Morrison has over 30 years of leadership experience, and he understands how toxic environments can hinder growth, how poor communication, a lack of teamwork, and negative mindsets often derail success, but proactive leadership and intentional strategies can drive meaningful transformation. Now, as a chief of police and former assistant director of the Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training, Earl specializes in consulting, mentoring, and training that helps individuals and organizations overcome challenges and perform at their best. His work focuses on leadership development, equipping professionals with practical tools for effective communication, stronger team dynamics, and sustainable organizational growth. And with all of that in mind, Earl, did I miss anything?
Oh, no, you're great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. So Earl, again, is not new to our platform. We've had an opportunity to collaborate together previously and just really great discussions in terms of leadership and career development. So let's jump into this conversation. So when we talk about career development inside organizations, what does that really mean beyond promotions or job titles?
You know, for me, it's like, as you read there, people figure out my passion is developing and mentoring others. And I think what we miss is that we think that developing means promotion. Developing means you got to move up in an organization. And for me, I think if we can mentor people and value them by helping them be the best, whatever their title is, whether it's the entry level, whether it's mid-level, or whether it's the high administration, I think we miss an opportunity to develop people and make them the best at what they are, where they currently are, because not everybody wants to move up. Some people are really content with just being valued and contributing at their level, but they want to do it as best they can. And I think we miss that a lot.
Yeah, actually, those are discussions that we've had in the military in the past in terms of like bringing back technical expertise, like what we call warrant officers, right? Because the drive has been so much to make sure that people push up the ranks that sometimes the further you go up, the more that your role becomes administrative, right? And so just using that military example. But there are some people who are really great at their job and who really want to remain those technical experts. And so we're looking at how do we grow and develop them. So from that same perspective, I really love what you're saying about actually companies mentoring people in the direction that they want to go and leveraging those skills and talents. Maybe it might be a lateral move and working across different projects versus always the focus on the upward mobility. Because the whole thing, and you can correct me if you have a different perspective, is to make sure that we have people who are actively contributing to the mission of our company and our organization, right? And so that can look different from a variety of perspectives and ways.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, so from your perspective, why do organizations, they struggle to develop talent internally? Because again, if we're doing all this pipeline management, if we are producing all of these programs, why are organizations still struggling with internal pipeline management, even if they say it's a priority?
I think one of the biggest things is that we're not intentional enough. We think it's somebody else's duty to do so. We don't know how to do it. And, sometimes when you lead an organization or you're an owner of an organization, you don't like to ask for help. And you just assume that somebody might jump in and take care of it. But I think we just don't put enough effort. We assume that it will happen. We would love for it to happen. And then you throw in the fact that most of us are trying, we've got some kind of product, we've got some kind of task, we got something that we have to accomplish. And if we're not careful, we'll focus on that instead of focus on the development of our people. And we get so focused on the management side of it that we forget the leadership side of it.
I want to dig into that a little bit because, I've said in a lot of rooms, especially from the HR side, where we talk about being intentional with employee development. And sometimes it's not necessarily, I think we can get into that pit of great ideas, right? being intentional with employee development, we get into that pit of great ideas, and then we get little results because we don't actually make a move. But some organizations will say it's because of our budget. It's because, we're not able to invest in that talent in that way. And so what is your response to that? Is it always a budget issue?
Honestly, like goodness, for me, I think it's an effort issue. Because here's the deal. If I have an expertise, I can teach you my expertise. I can help you in your field if I take the time. See, I think it's more we don't want to take the time to develop each other, as opposed to we always say that, well, I can't afford training. I can't send them off to these extravagant things to do. And it's like, hey, there's some very affordable leadership training out there. You have some, I have some. We've dealt with lots of people that do. But I also take the stance that if I'm leading my organization, I have an expertise that I can impart onto my people. Why am I not doing that? Why am I not looking for leaders within my organization that we don't have to go anywhere? Internally, we can teach and train our people and add value to them without it costing us anything other than an investment in our people and an investment of time. That's all it costs.
You know what? I feel like that's gonna be a moment for this particular episode of the podcast where you said that it is an effort issue, because sometimes we think that we have to bring in these mass. Now, we both do leadership training and development and talent development, so I guess I'm not going to talk myself out of a contract. Nope. But I also think that when companies go into this, organizations are looking at the ROI on those investments, right? And so when we talk about the pipeline management, what we're investing in, you want to get an ROI out of that. And so I remember, especially because someone who does training and development full time, reading an article is that the title of the article was literally "Training is not the answer," right? And it was in response to companies when we talk about this career development option, where the solution was always, well, let's hire this or send them to this $100,000 training program. And it equipped them with a skill, but didn't necessarily close the gap on performance. And so one of the things that you kind of have pointed out that we haven't mentioned yet is being able to look internally at our talent pool. We might have projects and things that we can, if we understand what the needs are within our talent pool and how to really constructively grow people within our organization. Some of this can be done, at least from my perspective, through the art of delegation and strategic positioning, right? If I'm looking to grow you in a certain area, and that requires that investment of effort and time, and understanding that if I really, from a leadership perspective, have taken time to understand my employees and what they're looking for and having those conversations, I can put them in situations or put them in strategic positioning relationships where that is going to help to grow and cultivate that talent. Any response to that?
Yeah, I think you're right on with that, with what we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm like you. Look, I'm not trying to talk either one of us out of garnering business, but here's the, neither one of us have an expensive business. But what I'm saying is that, you can get training, but there has to be a development piece from that training.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we think we're going to bring in these expensive coaches and things that come in, nothing against any of them. They all have their niche, right? But we expect something magical from them. And I tell people when they're sitting in my classroom, I am not going to give you anything magical. But what I am going to give you is a roadmap and some tools to accomplish some development and to grow yourself as a person and as a leader if you put forth the effort. See, it's got to be from us on one end. It's got to be from the administration. It's got to be from the business. And, I learned a lot from the military. I know you did too, is that, we didn't just know our job. We knew the people around us jobs, because we never knew when one of them might not be able to complete the mission for lots of different reasons. Yeah. We don't do that well enough in our organizations to say that, look, I'm not trying to take your job because I know it, but I can help all of us be better if I understand your job. And if I need to do it, I can, but I think it helps us be better when we understand that and we're developing each other. Because again, we haven't even said this, but we're planning for the future with that, because if I'm gone, then the next person can just take over. And we really don't miss anything, because we can go complete the mission because we've trained them to do the job and keep going. It doesn't mean they're going to take my job when I'm still there. It doesn't mean that they're going to derail anything. It doesn't even mean they want to promote. But man, we would be so much more efficient and effective if we understood that more.
Yeah, it's the cross training. It's the S word I can't think of it right there, but it's the succession planning in that
Yeah,
way. It's cross training, but it's cross training and just be in continuity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we go into a corporate environment. It's a dog eat dog world. Everybody's scared, especially in a time where people are experiencing layoffs. People are scared that AI is going to take your job. I was just doing an event this morning. I was saying, hey, AI is a tool, right? And so there's some things that AI is not going to be able to replace. If you have certain skills, like we talk about the leadership, communication, some of those skills are not going to be able to be replaced by AI. It is a tool that can enhance. So we have to embrace these changes, understand how to leverage these things as a tool, and then continue to focus on building bridges in cross training and in continuity. Right now, people really think that when an organization, that part of this process of career development planning, succession planning, leadership development is really understanding the distinctions between recruitment, retention, and turnover. And I don't think that many people understand that. They think, well, we have high recruitment numbers, but that doesn't mean that you're going to retain them, right? And then if you're turning over, that's the HR part of me. So in your experience, what are some common reasons that capable employees leave organizations where they could have grown? And that's that retention piece, right?
100%. I'll tell you, it's especially today and all across the board, we always want, there's two things we want. We want to be respected and we want to be valued. And they're intertwined, but they're also just a little bit different. We have to respect that we're different. We all have different perspectives. It's what makes us work. You've got talents that I don't. I've got talents that you don't. If we work together in the same organization, that's what makes it work. The minute we hire somebody, I think we forget I think we check a box and say, man, we've got an employee. We filled the position. Let's go to work. The problem is that we don't continue to value that employee. And you have the gaps there where you have the new employee and the old employee. And they're like, oh, well, we have lots of applicants. Everybody wants to work here, but nobody stays here. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. Okay. You can want to come in the door, but what's happening is that, man, it sounds good on the front end, but when I get here, the same standard doesn't apply. And I've worked with organizations and been in organizations where the standard is way high to get in, but we don't hold the accountability. We don't keep that there. And for me, accountability is value. Development is value. Teaching you your role as you grow in the organization is value. I want to respect you. I want to value you. So I'm going to take care of you and I'm going to hold you to the same standard it was to get in. That's what keeps you there. And I'm going to continue to develop you throughout there. And then I'm going to plan that, man, if anybody wants to take my job, if they want to prepare to be a chief of police, if they want to prepare to be any part of that, my job is to prepare them for that. Whether they take my spot when I'm gone, whether they go somewhere else. I think that's where we kind of get jammed up, is that we worry about, well, what if I invest in these people and they leave? Well, what if you invest in them and they stay? What if you actually invest in people and they figure out, man, this is the place that I want to be? You can chase money all you want to. You can chase these things where people tell you, but people want culture and environment where it's equal, where we're mentored, where we're developed, where we're shown value and we're prepared. Look, if you want to stay here, I'll help you be the best, whatever it is you want to be. How can we not invest in people? That's why people leave, is that I don't think we value them. I think we make excuses like, well, we can't afford this, or we can't afford that. And you know what? We always find ways to afford the things that we want. So why do we not want to develop our people?
That was a lot said. I think that there has to be more discussion on making the distinctions between the recruitment, the retention, and the turnover, right? Because you just hit the nail on the head, because I was looking up some of the statistics, even just in my own work. I know that it costs about 2.5 times an employee's salary from recruitment to if you don't retain, especially within the first 6 months. All the money that you invested in recruiting, the initial development, and then your turnover rates, looking at that from a 6-month standpoint. You just lost a lot of money. I was looking at this article here from HR Bench where they talk about indirect cost of turnover, right? Loss of productivity during the vacancy period, Then you got to go through the process of new hiring. So you're spending more money on that, disruption to the team and morale, burnout and turnover, and then lost client relationships or knowledge. The thing about it is it had to have been something or a gap where that employee did not feel valued or that they did not fit into that organizational culture, especially when you're talking about quick turnover rates. So the reason why I pose that question, Earl, is because the work that we do, both in leadership development, both, really focus on preparing people for those next stages, is because it really ties into that, having that understanding of the link between how we develop our people, what opportunities are we offering. And so it's great if you have a education reimbursement package, but if the culture is crap, then the free tuition that you're giving me, I'm still not going to stay, right? It would just give somebody that survival mentality. Well, I'm just here until they finish paying for school. I'm going to move up,
exactly.
Right?
Yes, actually, that happens all the time.
Do you think that this is what has contributed now? Because I come from a generation, and I know that you're only 25 yourself, but I come from a generation where it was kind of like, you go to school, you graduate, you go get a job, and typically you stay in that job for a long time, right? That's the expectation. This generation is so different. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I've had to learn to adapt myself in terms of thinking, because on average, they're going to stay in a job every 2 years because they're looking for opportunities to grow. And so they're a little bit more dynamic, where someone like me who still has that mentality, if I get a job, I feel valued, I'm happy there, I can stay there for years, right? But how do we as leaders, even for those of us who are teaching leadership courses, who are talking about career development, how do we tap into that, into this current generation to make that connection? Because I think that that's just something that organizations have to be prepared for. And I will say this, that just because we're in this new phase of where people are bouncing around and transitioning every 2 years, some of it could be organizational culture, or some of it just could be how culture is today, that people don't stay at jobs for a long period of time, that they're looking for opportunities to grow their salaries and to get different experiences. So what's your take on that, Earl?
So I think you're right in the aspect. I think we've taught that hey, just pursue the salary, just pursue the happiness, just pursue that. Whereas way back when you got in, you got a decent job, you stuck with it, you worked your tail off, and if you work hard enough, you'll move up. I think the balance is that, as I said before, is like, I think you have to create the culture where I don't necessarily always look for skill, I look for fit. And people look at me sometimes like, really? Well, here's the thing, I can teach you the job. I can't teach mindset as easy as I can the job. But if you're willing to learn, if you want to be part of something, I'm looking for, will you fit in with the organization? Do you want to be developed? Do you want to be mentored? Or does it sound like you're going to be chasing the rainbows all the time because you're going to look over and think that the grass is greener? Well, they're only going to show you the patch that grows. They're not going to show you, behind the buildings where it's all messed up, right? And so I think we have to understand is that, for me, it's recruiting for what's best for our culture. And then whether they're a young person, mid-tier, or they're older, are they a good fit? And then when they join us, I have to be intentional about making sure I develop a culture that they want to stay. That maybe somebody else does pay more than I do. Maybe somebody else has a different benefits, but they're not going to get the same kind of culture that they would if they went over there. Because maybe you go over there and you got all the stuff that you think is fancy and you're a number. In a lot of organizations that grow and develop their people, you're not just a number. They know who you are. And maybe they're big and the owner doesn't, or the upper administration doesn't, but your supervisors that are there know who you are. And so I think we have to get better at that piece. And I try very hard not to label, because it's so easy to say, well, we're going to label the generation that's this way or that way.
Yeah.
We do it because it's an easy way to not have to look at what do we need to do better. I've found some really good young people that just want to be part of something. Now, I will tell you, they are not going to put up with the same things that you and I did when it comes to the workforce, because that's not how they were taught.
I think that's great, actually.
Me too, because I think in some ways we probably should have stood up for ourselves more and said, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired of you overlooking me for the person that doesn't work hard. And so I appreciate that, because to me, that keeps us on our toes to always be looking at how can we be better, and how do we need to develop the organization to also be able to develop those people. So for me, it's like, I think it's on us to adapt and then make sure that we're doing the best that we can. Because I'll never make a promise that I don't think I can follow through with. And if somebody says they got to leave me to go chase something, I'll tell them all day long, I'm not mad at you. But I'll tell you, you're going to realize some things when you're gone. And my job is to make it hard for you to leave. And if we got better at that, I think we wouldn't have as much turnover as we do. And sometimes we just have to look in the mirror and say, is it us? Or is it that other issue? And you're going to have it where it is the other issue. They're just going to go to a couple of years.
Yeah,
that's what they want. But I think a lot of it, we can slow that down if we would just look inward just a tad.
Yeah, I actually released the resource. I revamped the resource that I had. So if you see it whenever this airs, it's a resource we already had. And I literally have a whole chapter in that resource about being a cultural fit. I think it's somebody who comes from like a social impact type of background, right? And worked in these spaces. And a lot of the folks that I've worked with is trying to figure out, okay, I mean, even coming out of the military, right? Figuring out my cultural fit in terms of where can I go in a corporate environment. It's so easy for me to just slide back in and work with folks in the military, because that's what I know, right? Or working in the education environment. And honestly, at this age, I'm comfortable with that. I'm okay with that. But it takes a minute sometimes. And I love what you said about being able to just organizations, not just shrugging these young people off, or a young generation off because they have a different mentality. They're just not going to put up with your crap, honestly. And you want to make it hard for them to leave, in the sense that you've created such a culture and environment that they got up and they came to work every day, right? And so you know that it's hard for them to leave when they say, Mr. Morrison, if there's ever an opportunity for me to come back, I definitely will, right? But I want to get this experience, because that means that they're kind of grappling with themselves on what are their next steps, right? That means that there was the right type of mentoring, the right type of opportunities. And again, it might not have been something grand like, okay, we're going to give you $10,000 a year to go to this Harvard. I mean, listen, I've worked for organizations where they give us a free Udemy subscription, right? And the Udemy classes are $10, but right. But I have so enjoyed working in those organizations that it never crossed my mind to, okay, this is what I want to lead. Now, when we talk about, I think that we've touched a lot in terms from leadership, how we shape that culture. And so I talk a lot in my own work about the process of decatastrophizing, and organizational culture, and how leaders really have to set the tone. And from a leadership organizational perspective, when we talk about decatastrophization, that means putting parameters in place to really create a culture where the expectations of what we as leaders expect kind of becomes the norm within a culture. So if you put crap in, you're going to get crap out. But Absolutely. With the decatastrophization process, we put the policies, we set the tone. We are really cultivated that environment where people really understand what to expect. So the next question to you is, when we look at this, how can organizations encourage both growth and development without creating the expectation that everyone must move up a ladder immediately? Like, this is really a place for you to grow where you are, where you're at. And, even if it's just right now, you focus on just growing a particular skill set.
I think it's really easier than people think. I think one, understanding your own culture and saying, hey, look, we have things here. We can help you do whatever. But getting to know the people, what do they want? What does those individuals, do they like where they're at? Do they understand their role? How can I help you be the best you are where you're at? And I think sometimes if we do that well, you'll find some people that want to move up because they understand that you're willing to help them. I remember way early on wanting to move up in an organization. It was just instilled in me, being in the military. It was always that if I had the opportunity to move up, that was the goal. And I struggled because I didn't have anybody that was willing to invest in me. I had to hunt and search everything myself. We had the regular classes that you were supposed to take because, for certifications, you got XYZ that you have to accomplish. Well, they pushed those, but they didn't push the development piece, the leadership piece. They didn't do those. And, sometimes we get stuck in certain ones because they're affiliated with well-known agencies, and not to take anything away from them. But Dr. Taylor, as well as I do, that sometimes they just check boxes.
It's just a name. You pay
everybody gravitates to it because it's that name, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful with that. But I think if we just understand our people and just say, what is it that you want to accomplish in a year, in 2 years? See, I don't like the 5-year right away because they don't know. Because again, you've got to know that you're a good fit for the organization, that you like it, that they like it. And so I scaled that back a little bit. What do you want to do over the next year? And what about 2 years? And have you considered a longer term of your future? I do that the minute I walk in the door somewhere, or when I get people in, is that I just want them to share with me what their goals are. And then I can go from there instead of me trying to tell them what their goals should be. You get the investment, then I can then take that and add value to them.
Yeah, I was actually going to answer the next question about those conversations, but you already covered it from a leadership standpoint. It's like, okay, just because I say today that I don't want this, it doesn't mean that, 2 or 3 years from now, I might want to begin the process of move up in the organization. But right now, I might just be focused on skills-based, getting to know the organization itself and just figure out. Now, I've been a part of organizations where I've had to leave or been asked to leave because I wasn't a cultural fit for those organizations. I don't think any one of us who sit here and do this type of coaching and leadership development, it's important to share that, hey, we've had our share of ups and downs. My career, your career definitely has not been smooth sailing. I've come into organizations where people look at my resume, they're like, oh, she's going to be a great fit. And then I get into the organization. And of course, as a career coach, I interview well. So then I get the role and then I go into the organization. I might start pointing things out like, hey, maybe this organization is looking for a quick solution. That's not some things I will do. But if you want me to actually do organizational development, then we have to ask, I'm asking the 5 whys. What is the root cause, right? Because if we're not addressing the root cause and we're just putting a Band-Aid on it. Some people don't like that. So I definitely have been asked to, hey, would you resign? And surely enough, I will, because I know from my character what I value, what I'm willing to accept, and I've embraced the fact that I'm not going to be a fit for every organization. I respect them enough to come to me and say, "Hey, this is not working," and I'm usually going along with that, right? Because this happened once in my career, and that's okay. It's important to admit that like, hey, things are going to happen. So if you find yourself in that situation, they actually probably did you a favor. From a leadership and management standpoint, it's really important when you first bring folks into your organization, because you do the interview process and you get a feel of somebody being a cultural fit, right? But it's not really until they start doing the work, until they start to, connect with people in that organization. So I think that the questions, the things that you pointed out is part of that process of leaders having those honest conversations. I'm going to ask you one more question. Earl, this conversation is so good, I can keep it going for another 30 minutes. But we're going to try to stick to being, a little bit. We'll go over. We'll try to stick to our little 30-minute podcast time. Hopefully, later on, when we do season 3, I can get you back, because it's such a natural skill. Because we already, we're on the same page about a lot of things. They have a good understanding, and I love your approach to just say, like, look, great. I mean, as a consultant, I'm not going to turn down a $200,000 deal. I'm waiting on that day to come, right? But I also want to make sure that people are getting an ROI. And sometimes it's just a practical, hey, like, let's look at what you have. Let's do a diagnostic and look at what you already have in place and see what's working, what's not. Because you can just make some tweaks. And this is why, like, the leadership courses that you offer, the coaching that you provide is really so important, because it's about equipping people with tools and the skills that they need, and giving them the basis in the roadmap, as you pointed out earlier. So I want you to, I'm going to ask this question, but then I kind of want you to integrate the things that you do through your business and organization. So what happens when we talk about organizational growth and culture, right? What happens to organizational culture when people feel that their growth is supported rather than overlooked? And I know that you've partnered with organizations who have brought you in to offer this, even some baseline training and facilitation. And I think that's a start in terms of investing in their people. But from what does that actually look like from a long-term perspective?
I think, having been involved in toxic cultures that just struggled and didn't understand anything other than it's all about me and what can I get out of it, as opposed to those that really want to develop their own employees and treat them well and give them opportunities. For me, man, it's so different to be valued. You talked about having to leave organizations as well. I've had to leave 3. Resignation asked me. Politics was a lot of it. When you get into some of the things that I've been in levels, just like politics can play a role.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I'm not really angry about any of that, because if you're not supported, it's not worth it. Now, I'm hard-headed, I'm stubborn. I will dig in and I will complete the mission if you allow me, even if you don't support me. But being supported versus not being supported, oh my goodness, it is so huge. Your stress level's down, your accomplishments are there, you feel the value. Having been through both, it is so much more refreshing to be valued and someone cares about your development and wants you to be successful, as opposed to we don't care. We just want you to do whatever we say. We want you to compromise your character and yourself, and you'll be okay. You'll be well compensated, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, those are not good fits for me. So if you need me to leave, I'm not mad at you. We'll part ways as friendly as we can, and I will move on, making sure that my character is intact. And I'll tell everybody all day long, as long as you do that, you will be okay no matter what.
So if I was someone who was interested in taking your class, Earl, what are the type of tools, or what are your offerings in terms of what can I expect from that experience if I'm bringing you in to facilitate, or I'm taking a class from you?
I'm a pretty no bones spared here. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear sometimes. And I'm going to give you some practical ways. But one of the main things I always tell everybody, we can't begin to grow unless we look at ourselves first. I'm going to tell everybody, I tell an organization the same thing, individuals within the organization and the organization itself. You got to look within first, because if I'm not leading myself well, I'm not leading somebody else well. So as an organization, if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're not going to develop anybody within that organization. So I have several of those classes where I talk about mindset, the mentor mindset. Accountability is huge. We're going to make mistakes. You got to admit them and learn from them. Accountability, because to me, accountability adds value. If you hold people accountable to the standard, then you can continue to grow. But if you don't, you're going to have problems. And so for me, those are the things that are key. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest issues that everybody across the board has is ego. Ego gets in the way because we accomplished a few things, or somebody told me I was great at something, and I happened to, everything worked out for me. And so I developed that ego of it just starts to grow, and I'm perfect and I don't make mistakes. And if I do, so what? I'm the boss. It derails so many things if we can't kind of curb that some. Now, please don't misunderstand me. Anybody that's listening to this, confidence, you have to have it. Sometimes you have an ego moment, and I'm okay with that. Okay, it's do you lead with that all the time? Is it always your way or the highway? And please, again, there are some things that as a leader, it has to be that way because you've got to accomplish the mission. But most of the time, it doesn't have to be that way. You can put the ego aside and you can say, we have to work together with our differing perspectives because we've got to accomplish something. And so for me, I get you to take a good, long, hard look at that. And once you do that, you can now start to develop yourself. You can start, being disciplined and intentional about putting good stuff in so that good stuff comes out. I just developed a class, Leading Without Ego. I've got the book that's about to drop in the next 2 weeks that's tied to that. It's probably one of the ones that I'm the most excited about because it's a little more in depth than my other leadership classes that I've had. I have one that's Supervising with Purpose and a couple others that are all about the beginning steps. But this one is to take it a little bit further and understand exactly what you're doing within your organization. So I'm pretty excited about that.
We're excited for you. We dropped season 3. I would love to have you back on to continue this discussion because I think when based on the title, we talk about career development inside of organizations, that they were expecting us to come in as folks who do this work and say, what you're going to need is $1.5 million. And yes, we're willing to accept that. You know, you can contact Earl or myself.
Right.
In fact, we'll go in together.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, yeah, you want to have the funds to invest in it, but just common, good old practical common sense in terms of valuing your people, creating, a culture where people feel like they're included in the culture, right? Understanding recruitment, retention, succession plan, internal, understanding that basic terminology. There's some basic things that you can do. And then, when it comes to developing your people, there are folks like us that have the experience, that have the real world experience, that come out of various situations, who are running companies, who can come in and do training or, assessments and provide feedback to support organizations at a more affordable level, but it's still providing you with practical solutions that's going to give you long-term sustainable change. And with that in mind, Earl, you got your new class coming out. You got your new book coming out in 2 weeks. We're going to make sure that we plug all of that for you as a part of this podcast. We're going to wrap up, because, again, I can go another 40 minutes with you. But we're going to wrap up this episode. And so we talk about next steps. What do you have coming up? Any final words of advice? Anything else that you want to have that you have coming up you want to share with the audience?
No, just I have a class that's scheduled in July. I have that book that's dropping. Just pay attention to us at earlmorrison.com. That's my website. We're just excited to be part of that. Next steps for anybody, I would say, look, just because we say that we're not expensive, it's not that there's no value in what we do. Mm-hmm. You can get value and not have to pay a whole lot of money. Now, I'm with her. If you want to get us together for 1.5 or 2 million, we're all in. But think about, research. I promise you won't be disappointed if you contact either one of us and look at what we have to offer. It's affordable, because here's the whole thing for me is that I've lived it. Mm-hmm. Dr. Taylor's lived it. I've had to leave 3 organizations, like I said earlier, because it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't culturally the way that it should be. And I was working hard to change it. So for me, it's like, I want to make it where the dollar amount is not an excuse for you to get something that will help you grow and develop and be better. My goal, what I told God is that if I can help one person, that's what it's about. And so I try to make sure that, hey, we all like to make some money. I would be lying to you if I said that
no.
I didn't want to, right? But I want to make it affordable, because it's so important that you have an opportunity to get this training and development and help yourself and your organization and the people around you. So for me, that's the whole thing, is that do something, take that step. Don't act like you can't afford it. Don't act like you don't have time, because we afford what we want to, and we make time for the things that are our priority.
Yeah. I mean, because even when it comes to self-development, you have books out there. So if someone can't take your class at the moment, you have books available on Amazon. There's always resources. You do podcasts, giving advice and events like this. So there's always resources available for self-development. And so what the practical points from this conversation is that from a leadership perspective, there's opportunity for you to, just by simply valuing the folks who work with you, recognizing the people within your organization, getting to know them, right? Because it starts with just those practical approaches, and that's absolutely free. Oh, thank you for joining us today. Again, this was a very exciting conversation, and I know it was exciting because I went on like 10 minutes past our 30-minute mark. But it's very engaging, because I think it's just practical advice that folks need to know. Thank you for joining us here on the WORxK Solutions Podcast. This is season 2. We want to have you back definitely in season 3. And we look forward to sharing information about your new book as well as your course, because, again, ego can really become a prohibitor, right? It can prohibit a lot of progress. And that's something that's an individual self thing to work on. And then also, I just want to point out, because it could be a whole nother conversation, ego we talk about that decatastrophization. Why do we have to go through the process of decatastrophization? Because somebody's ego, you have multiple egos that have seeped into an organizational culture, and now that's becoming or shaping the dynamics of that organization. So we'll pick that conversation up next time. Again, thanks for joining us today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and stay tuned for other upcoming episodes of the WORxK Solutions Podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.